All right, Vikram, welcome to the show.
Jimmy, thanks for having me, man. Been looking forward to being on here.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this show actually because you are a living, breathing example of how things can be for doctors, and how financial freedom can really set you up to practice medicine optionally. You can practice as much or as little as you want, and create that life you love. But before we dive into all of your amazing entrepreneurial endeavors, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, you know, what you're doing these days, and on your website, you're a self-proclaimed Renaissance man. So what led you here today, and tell us all the good stuff. Don't leave anything out.
Yeah. So I'm not supposed to be on this podcast. I should be somewhere in a cath lab putting a stent in, but it's funny how things turn out. I would say origin story, short, sweet, simple is, in the South Asian culture. I know a lot of your listeners, maybe of Indian heritage or background. We got doctor, lawyer, or loser. So I had to choose one.
That's pretty good.
And then I sort of went into it because it was like sort of the default setting, but then I actually enjoyed it. Like when I was starting to study for my MCAT, so like all that kind of stuff, I was like, this is interesting. Started getting into it, and then the holy grail was to get into medical school. And when I got it, I was like, oh man, my life is made. And then I realized, oh wait, I had to figure out specialties and subspecialties, and then so then there was just like another ladder to climb. So then I'm like, all right, I want to do internal medicine via cardiology. I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, cardiology is one of the most competitive specialties to get into. So then focus all my energies and time and did that. And then and also during that time, I had so many family members actually died of heart attacks. I had 6 people in my family on my dad's side die of heart attacks, and my father even collapsed in front of me at my son's first year birthday. And so I was like, it's super important to figure this out, because it was, it's part of it's one part of what I want to do to help my own family. But I think most people in the world have some kind of heart issues at some point. And so I really need to study this. And, I really enjoyed the field. And so when I was in Milwaukee, when I was doing my fellowship after I left Georgetown, I was like, man, this is interesting. This is fun. I really enjoy it. But I noticed the work ethic and not really the work ethic, the work life balance of my attendings was crazy. A lot of them were just cranking out hour after hour, extended stays as being, call after call, procedure after procedure, and there's no break. And it was just really because they were chasing the dollar. And then it just really hit me. I'm like, this can't be my life. This is not what I signed up for. And I also don't want my clinical decisions to be influenced by my financial decisions. I wanted to draw the line. And unfortunately, many physicians don't draw that line. And so that's really what stood out, Jamie. So I wanted to do something different.
Yeah. That's such an interesting story because it's like almost a double meaning there, right? Like you're talking about, you get all this training, like 8-9 years of training, right? After medical school. Yeah. And you're doing that in, interventional cards, cardiology, putting stents in people. You have 6 members of your family, who have an MI or have a heart attack, one of them right in front of you at your 1-year-old's birthday party. And that has like dual meanings almost, right? Like you're helping people with the exact problem that happened to your father, right? You're putting stents in people that are having MIs. And at the same time, you're asking these like more essential work-life balance questions in terms of, existential crisis. Like, what is my life going to look like? And I think that's like a fascinating story that I don't know if I've ever heard before, where like that pivotal moment where, at that birthday party, the very thing that you do to help people is the thing that he needed. But the very thing that you needed personally was to have this balance that you didn't currently have.
Yeah, that's interesting how you put that. And it was really also, I was flirting with some entrepreneurism. It was not, I'm not an entrepreneur by heart in terms of like what I never read any business books. I didn't learn any of that. We don't get taught that in medical school, Jimmy, as you know. And, but in fellowship, I started this like, I was moonlighting, and then the facility needed more moonlighters. So I told him, hey, look, I'll provide all the moonlighters. Give me the contract. I got the contract, and I convinced all my buddies in cardiology to, work under my umbrella. And then, I got a little piece of the action, and that was like my first entrepreneurial venture. And then what I did was, I wanted to, learn, some kind of something to earn money outside of medicine, because I just felt it was so scary to put all my eggs in one basket. What if I can't practice? What if something happens? Like, And so I was like, let me learn something else. And so I tried options trading, and I got my butt kicked. So I was like, all right, that doesn't work. And then so when I was about to practice, it was in 2013 when I was like, all right, it's time to start practicing cardiology, join a group, do all that. But I still was like, I need to have some other side gig. And this was before the term side gigs were cool or side hustles. Doctors at that time didn't do that kind of stuff. And I know, fast forward 10, 15, 20 years later, it's a lot more in vogue, but not then. But I told my wife, I made a declaration, if I'm still practicing by the age of 40, something went terribly wrong. And I don't know why I said that, but I just knew that if I'm practicing for my day-to-day living, then this is not the right path for me. And so I made that declaration. Maybe, Jimmy, that's what doctors need to do. Make a declaration in their life of what they stand for, what they want, and what they're because what you tolerate is what you get. And so I'm not willing to tolerate all my money coming from cardiology. Number two, I was not willing to tolerate every fourth weekend of the rest of my life being on call. I was not willing to tolerate taking this much time away from my two beautiful boys, my wife, who's also a physician. And so once you make your declarations, then you're like, how do I make this happen? And I had no idea, right? This is when, and I wish there was a physician philosopher there to guide me. There wasn't. So, I had read for books, and I went to a Tony Robbins conference, and I started pouring all this good stuff in my head. And eventually good stuff started coming out, right? And then I was like, all right, I started acting differently than my colleagues. I was doing these little shifts that they weren't doing. Instead of coming home after my calls or my weekend or my busy clinic, I would sneak away and go to like the real estate investment clubs. We didn't have meetups back then. We didn't have all these online. There was no bigger pockets. And so this is where you learn the real estate. And I was like, okay, after reading the Kiyosaki books, these little concepts are like, hey, maybe this could be something on the side. And it was nothing meant to be a major life-changing thing. It was just like, let me buy a house or two on the side, and just maybe, like things you teach, Jimmy. I know you teach people the basics of finance as a physician, but then I know you also say, hey, you want to hack this? You want to accelerate this? Try these strategies. And I know real estate's part of your strategy too. So I started adding the real estate, I went from playing Monopoly, which it's level 1, and then you start playing the board game Cash Flow, which any of you physicians out there who haven't done it, go on Amazon. It's $89 or $79. Get the Cash Flow board game, play with your kids, your spouse, and you up level your education, right? So I started doing all these things, but still, it was just almost like I was planting a bunch of seeds, knowing that it will take about 5 to 10 years for these to grow.
Yeah, I love I feel like you're my spirit animal, Vikram. So we teach 3 things in A's, the Alpha Coaching Experience, and that's mindset, money, and balance, right? And you just hit on all of that. So I love that, and I particularly love that. I think words, and I know that you agree, but words are very powerful. And so when you say what you tolerate is what you get, I think that needs to be said again. What you tolerate is what you get. And that's almost like maybe even a better way of like the hell yes policy that we teach, where you need to say no to anything that doesn't make you say hell yes. Basically, you shouldn't tolerate anything that you're not insanely passionate about. And that's what you did. You're like, no, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore because it's producing this result. And if I want a different result, I got to do something different than what I'm doing. And a lot of doctors aren't willing to do that, which I find fascinating because you took that leap. And that's the second part of your story. And for people that don't do entrepreneurship, it's subtle, but it's so important. You started buying a house or 2 on the side. You started the moonlighting thing on the side. People have this idea of entrepreneurship that you just dive in blindly and hope that you land on your feet. The vast majority of people that I know started something on the side while they were still practicing. Once they found success, then they took the leap. Now, you don't have to be fully functional, 100% exactly what you want it to be yet, but you need to have the concept proved, right? And then once you did that, you're like, oh, I'm going to jump into this thing and change the financial. You're going to accelerate your wealth, produce generational wealth. And that's what we teach in the hybrid financial independence model, right? The basic personal finance stuff. And if you want to get there faster, if you don't want to practice by the age of 40, well, you got to do something to speed things up. And you chose real estate. So let's talk a little bit about that. You've built this like real estate empire. I mean, over $600 million, I think at this point in the
650 now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible. So you talk about the cash flow board game, which by the way, I haven't played before. I'm going to have to like literally go buy this right after this podcast and start playing with my kids. But talk to us about that. Full-time cardiologist to, having a $650 million real estate fund. So how did you get there? What, what was that journey like?
So I'm going to tell you one thing before I get there. So the number one thing I started doing maybe by the age, by second year of fellowship, was having these vision boards. And my wife used to make fun of me. And by the second or third year of me doing the vision board, she's like, don't put on the vision board, because whatever you put on there seems to come true. and, and so a vision board is essentially like, you take like you buy something and there's a cardboard insert. I would take that cardboard insert, instead of throwing it away, I would turn it to the back, and I'd use a black Sharpie marker, and I would just put 1 through 5 or 1 through 7 or 1 through 10, the things I wanted. I would just slap that, on my mirror or, somewhere. And I started programming what I wanted, and I would keep seeing it, and it would subconsciously influence my decisions and my actions. And the other thing was, I was careful who I took counsel from. A lot of people would share with me, like, I had so many cardiology friends, internal medicine friends, so many doctors were like, what you're doing doesn't make sense. You're stupid. It's not going to work. Oh, no other doctor has done that. Come on this guy's trip with me. Come on, you're working too hard. Let's go hang out. Let's do a guy's night out. And I just knew that, look, my vision is where there's no periods in my life. There's always commas and ands. I want this and this and this and this and this. It's not this or this or this or this. And so people create this false choices, false dichotomies. And so I was like, Peter Thiel, the guy who created PayPal, said something. He goes, how do you convert your 10-year goals into 6-month goals? And if you can consistently do that, your life is going to be, irrevocably different than anyone around you. And the other thing was, Grant Cardone talks about the 10X rule. All that means is, let's say your goal is to create $1 million of net worth, or $10 million, whatever that is, add another 0 to it and go for that, put that much effort, and you'll at least achieve your original goal and probably even some more. And so these kind of principles really influenced me. And the final principle that influenced me was, if things are ELF versus half, ELF is easy, lucrative, and fun. Half is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. So my goal in life is to stop doing things that are half and move more things toward health. And I also believe, one of my coaches, Rich Litvin, always says, if it's not a hell yes, it is a hell no. And so these are my North Stars. And if things are taking me toward this, then I move toward it. And if things are taking me away from it, then I know it's not the right decision. And then the final rubric, if I could teach your listeners that have influenced me, is the 5 freedoms. And those are having financial freedom, time freedom, sort of a geographic freedom, like working from anywhere in the world, a vitality, like going from dad bod to like ultra fit, like I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I think we were talking about in the green room. I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in a couple of days. And then finally, I think is mindset freedom, which I know is part of your 3M philosophy. But mindset is 80% of the equation. People always think that mindset is, you just, rah, rah, rah. No, it's more than that. It's like, if you really believe that if you could not fail, what would you do? And I ask that kind of question to myself daily.
Yeah, I couldn't, reiterate that more. Mindset's one of those funny things. It reminds me of, so Soren Kierkegaard is where the phrase leap of faith came from. And for people, just look at the examples that in your life of successful physicians that have carved out a life that they love, right? Through entrepreneurship, through, whatever, you might see in front of you, real estate. It can be a variety of things. The one thing you're going to find in common is that those people have coaches and that they work on their mindset. And it is a fascinating thing to me, because most people, like myself, I was this way. So, I had a massive disbelief, skepticism about mindset work, about coaching. But everywhere you look, there's a reason why people say that, even when it comes to personal finance, like basic personal finance, people tell you it's 20% math, 80% behavior, it's 80% mindset, right? And you're going to hear that phrase over and over and over. So that was true in your entrepreneurial journey. It's true in personal finance. It's true in all the success stories people see around them. But until they take that leap of faith and try it, they don't quite understand what it means when people say they're working on their mindset, right? So when you say that mindset piece is so important, Do you take these mantras? Is that kind of where you go with that, the mindset aspect of things, or how has that impacted you along the way? And specifically, I was actually going to ask this, but you already alluded to it, the fear of failure. You said you kind of got rid of that. Did
Yeah.
you always have that mindset, or is that something you learned?
And you know the answer to that. We all have the fear of failure. It's fear of failure, fear of poverty, fear of lack of love, fear of being enough. You know, it's fear of, like, you know, being insignificant. You know, all of these things are inherent human fears, and they're meant to protect us in our old, you know, 10 million old reptilian brain. The amygdala, you know, the limbic system. It's supposed to keep us in check, but there's no more saber-toothed tigers chasing us. In fact, there's like Jaco in the hospital chasing us. That's about it, right? So what's these artificial fears constructs are essentially plaguing the physician community in the United States and in the world. What I suggest is realize this: your backup in life is to earn 200, 300, 400, $500,000 a year. That's your backup in life. Your worst day is someone's dream, my friends, listening to this podcast right now. My backup is earning $500,000 as a cardiologist. So why the hell am I not going all out and trying to do something with my life that could add more meaning? Now, if you want to be a cardiologist, perfect. Do it on your terms. Don't do it on their terms. But my thought was, look, in fourth grade, my teacher told me about Leonardo da Vinci. And I was recently in Italy, and I went to Leonardo's, you know, where he in Rome and Florence and Milan, and I was reading Walter Isaacson's book on Leonardo. I'm like, dude, this guy he was creating, you know, flying machines. He was a scientist. He was an artist. He was a poet. And I was like, I also want to do these things. I was not born just to be a cardiologist. I don't want to fit in a nice, clean box that someone told me. My identity is not so restrictive. It's expansive. And so let's go expand beyond what we're told. Yes, you're a doctor. All of you guys are beautiful doctors. You're amazing doctors. But is there more inside of you? If there is, work with Jimmy, work with someone like me, and let's unlock all of this potential. And so what I did was functional medicine saved my life. And the reason why I say that is I knew that practicing cardiology this way, which is reactive, which was pill for an ill, which is procedural oriented and heavy, was not the way I wanted to do it. I wanted to practice cardiology in a way that's proactive, preventive, preactive, predictive, precision medicine. And so I learned functional medicine. So on top of all this stuff I was already doing, I got trained in functional medicine, I got certified. But I was like, man, this is a risk, completely cash-based practice, leaving medicine. I didn't want to take that risk. And so you think I'm reckless, you think I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm actually very calculating what I'm doing. Everything I'm taking is mitigating risk because I have 2 kids, I have a mortgage, and I live in an expensive part of the country, Northern Virginia, DC. I'm not going to be cavalier about it. So I'm playing chess. Most doctors play checkers. So I was playing chess. And so what I did was, I was like, let me create more of a real estate portfolio so that literally if I don't make any money in this cardiology thing, this experimental cardiology, then I'd be okay. So I transitioned from single family homes, which I at that point accumulated about 30. And I was like, let me go to, how do I scale it up? LGS, leverage, growth, and scale. That's what I teach all my coaching clients. You must grow or you will die. Stagnation and comfort are the, beginning stages of, the downward fall. And so we must elevate what we're trying to do. So I was like, all right, let's go into multifamily. So I got trained, I got mentored. I took the leap of faith. I also found teamwork, partners to get your, dreams. You need a team. I found a partner in Ravi Gupta. He's another doctor of mine. And so we formed Viking Capital in 2015. And we started doing multifamily. First, we did it in a safe way. We, we're raising capital, coming in, joint venturing. And then we're like, you know what? If I can figure out how to put a stent in, if he can take care of a septic patient in a hospital, we can figure out this thing too. So we modeled best practices. We used the 3I methodology. We imitated, then we iterated, and then we finally innovated and made it our own. And so boom, we started Viking Capital, and now we just been named Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies, Jimmy, this year. And we're getting creating our portfolio. We're in 6 states, 8 different metropolitan areas. And, we've raised over $150 million of private equity, many of which is physicians working with us and growing their wealth. But it allowed me then to practice my cardiology the way I wanted. So I started Vitology Institute, and I loved what I did. During COVID, I had to shut down and make it virtual practice. And so I've sort of down ramped that. And one of the things of being a limitless MD or being a physician philosopher kind of person is really being adaptable and flexible. And so sometimes your dreams are not your destiny. I thought my dream was to be a cardiologist. Then it was like, oh, I thought my dream was to be a functional cardiologist. No, I thought my dream was to be a real estate tycoon. No, I thought my dream is going to be a high performance coach. No, it's all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we are now.
Yeah, and I want to highlight a few things that you just said, right? So you're talking about doing it on your terms. And a lot of times people get grief in our space because be like, oh, well, you're just taking all these doctors and they're just, all going to leave medicine and that sounds like it's your goal. And it's like, no, the goal is to practice medicine on your terms. And so for me, I love practicing anesthesia. I'm probably always going to practice some anesthesia. But to your point, you should be able to practice as much or as little. You should be able to practice because you want to, not because you have to. And this idea of practicing on your terms, I can't express how important that is. And for you, that's been functional medicine and then kind of down ramp that to, build Viking Capital and everything else that you're doing. And I love what you're saying because a lot of people do get pigeonholed into that identity of being a doctor. And you said, no, I refuse. Like, I want to be, a doctor and I want to be someone that builds this massive, real estate fund. And I also want to coach people. And you have all these things that are parts of who you are, because the person you are right now and the person you're going to be 5 years from now are different people. You're going to have different goals, different dreams, different visions. And that growth is really important. So you drop that dime just in the middle of this, right? You must grow or you're going to die. And, it reminds me like, Viktor Frankl's, Man's Search for Meaning, like literally people in concentration camps, when they lost their purpose, they died. And when I was looking at your website, I was actually looking at it today. I was like, I'm just going to check out his website again. And you had this quote on there. And I think this is so fundamentally important. This resonates deeply with me right now. And I'm sure it will for many listeners, whether that's right now or in the future. You say the first half of life, you chased money. And the second half of your life, you chased meaning. Now, I know exactly what that means because I've been in that journey the last, year and a half myself. But why don't you talk to us about that journey of rediscovering yourself and, taking that focus away from the personal finance piece? Because everybody thinks money is the answer at the beginning until they get the money and they're like, oh, it's not the answer. And then it brings you back to that mindset piece. So when you talk about the second half of your life, chasing meaning or purpose, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it brings some chills because I'm like, it's so true. Like, I grew up, a very happy family, but it was, definitely middle class. And, we had to be very careful with our money and, take loans and debt and do what we need to do to get by. Parents, put whatever they of love, education, entrepreneurship into me, whatever they could. But I remember, a lot of conversations always about, it's always difficult choices, a lot of scarcity mindset in the household. And I was like, and a lot of the arguments my parents would have was about money. And, I understand where they're coming from now, but at that time I was very impressionable. And I was like, man, I don't want to ever have this again. I don't want to have this angst, this uncertainty, this doubt, this worry, and this like low level thinking, like live below your means, save every dollar, penny earn, penny save, all this kind of like, and I call it wealth wounds, right? These wealth wounds were inflicted on as you're so one of the things I was like, let me make sure I'm so financially abundant. But then I realized, as I grew older, more mature, yeah, you can solve your money problems, but then you just have other problems. So I'm like, look, let me start working on all my problems and not see it as problems, but challenges and all these things. Like if I'm a surgeon's scalpel, each of these challenges is sharpening the blade. And I'm like slicing through life effortlessly versus with effort. And I'm excited about like, yesterday, my roof in my house, we got a new air conditioning unit. They didn't install it correctly. And then all this like water condensation essentially created a huge water leak. And I had just come back from a trip. So I'm looking there and I'm like, my old me would have been cursing. I'd be pissed off for about a week. I was like, all right, how much is it going to cost? What is it going to, okay, we'll take care of it. I can delegate a lot of the work to somebody. This is done. I'm going to move on. I'm excited for my trip upcoming. I'm excited about this podcast I'm doing. I'm excited about the book I'm reading. I'm thankful my kids are safe and I'm healthy. And it's just that reframing. So this happens with time. And so I'm chasing, I'm chasing me. I'm chasing me 10 years from now. I'm chasing me 20 years from now, the ideal version of me, the highest and best version of me. That's who I'm chasing. And, Ed Milet says it's called blissful discontent. So it's essentially like look, I'm super grateful for everything I've been given, everything that's come toward me. I appreciate myself and the hard work I've done, and I love the impact I'm having. But it's all within this sphere of like the goal is to become self-actualized, to become at peace while still growing, and it's a delicate balance.
Yeah. And I couldn't, yeah, that's exactly the journey I've taken for the last year and a half. I've got a friend as my college roommate. So he's currently living in Nairobi, and he has like the superpower of just being content. And my wife does too. And I have always been discontent. Like it's always been, where am I going next? And for me, finding that contentment while you grow, the combination of contentment with growth, I think is a really hard balance. And sometimes I'm focusing on one more than the other and kind of tip the scales. I'm like, oh no, I need to go back and work on my contentment now. No, I'm pretty content. I need to work on my growth. Like, how am I moving? What's my purpose? How am I growing? And when we stop growing, like you said, that is when we die, and I love that balance, but it's a constant work. It's not a practice that you can perfect. At least I haven't figured that out yet. I feel like it's something that, you're constantly focusing on the balance between those two things. I think that's really important.
I want to layer something on there, Jimmy, because I think what you said is so important. Everyone out there, guys, if you haven't done the mindset work, some of the thing that can bother you is comparison. Comparison is the thief of joy. So there's always going to be another doctor who's going to make more money than you. Perhaps they travel more than you. Maybe their kids get into a better school than your kids. There's always something out there. But what I realized is, look, what's my definition of success, contentment? And once I understand that, I'm on it's almost like a solo journey, and there are other people on their journeys. And if Jimmy, you told me some of the successes you're starting to have, I'm like, oh man, Jimmy's having that. I don't know, what does that make me less? Like, is he better than me? Like, what's no, like Jimmy's on his path and he's working really hard toward it. And my goal is, can I help Jimmy in any way I can? So the way I see it is this, guys: if you can just help more people um, get to their goals, they're automatically going to help you get to your goals. And realize what your goals are. Like, if you really are envious of somebody, say, hey, would I trade my life for theirs? And if you would, then maybe you need to adopt some more of what they're trying to do and be like them, but otherwise they're paying a certain price you don't even see. People get praised in public for what they do in private, right? You guys are seeing me at the not end of my journey, but after about 10 years of doing some major work, you're seeing all the success. You're not seeing that when I cried because, of the like going crazy for multiple days on call, or you're not seeing where me and my wife got into argument because why are you going to so many conferences? And I know you're trying to educate yourself, but it's putting a strain on the family. You're not seeing when I miss some of the kids' games, but now I don't have to do that. So I paid the price initially, so I never have to pay the price again.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me, I've heard this before, the idea that if you want what I have, you have to be willing to do what I've done. And far too many people want the life that they see in someone else, but they're not willing to take the risk, to get some help, and then to put the work in to do, what is necessary. And you're right. I love the 3 I's that you mentioned earlier, right? Imitate, iterate, and then innovate, right? You can imitate what other people's lives look like, and then practice that, iterate it, because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Everyone wants it to be a sprint. It's like, hey, you're going to get to your goals in a month or 6 weeks. And it's like, sometimes it takes 2 months, 6 months, a year to really kind of change some things. And then from that space, you can now really, truly innovate and make it your own, which, is exactly the journey that you went. And I'm a personal finance guy. I can't not ask you this question because of what you do at Viking Capital. So let's get, a little more concrete, maybe. There's this classic debate, right? Active real estate versus passive real estate. And you started owning some homes initially. Now you run a fund, right? That is much more passive. So when people have this debate, I was kind of curious, having been on both sides, where you land now, because there are some gurus, some really helpful educators in this space that are all in on active real estate, some that are all in on passive real estate. And, I kind of find that there's a spectrum there. So where does that land for you?
I don't know if you're trying to set me up, but you know me, I'm not either or. I'm always and, baby. I'm always and. God gave me commas, not periods. So let me do this. I'm actively passive. So what I do is this. Initially, I started passive. Then I started active. Then I made more active. Now I'm passive as well. So in Viking Capital, I'm actively creating an asset. I'm getting investors involved in it. I'm buying like 200, 400 unit apartment complexes. I'm getting a team. And it's a win-win-win in the transaction. The seller who's selling it to me probably already won. I'm, as a buyer, I'm winning. My investors are winning. The tenants are winning because we do wellness Wednesdays. We do all these improvements to the properties. I do CPR classes. So I throw in my medical infusion. I have juice bars in some of these places. So all this stuff, because you can never stop being a doctor just because you're not, not practicing per se.
Yeah.
And then when we sell these properties, we make tremendous profits, right? So then that's me active, but I passively invest in my own deals. And then I have friends who do car washes. They do, mobile home parks, self-storage, hemp farms, you can name it. I've invested in, other things out there. So I'm passively investing. So I would say the answer is do both. And it depends on your time gradient, right? If you have a lot of free time, you can start and you really enjoy it, then consider being active. If you're and if it's just the ends, I mean, if it's your end goal, not your means goal, meaning you really want to use real estate to get there, fine. But if your goal is just to, hey, take my money and give me an end result at ROI, an IRR, or equity multiple, then be passive, right? Some people geek out about real estate. I think me and you do, but other people don't. They think, hey, look, just give me the end income so I can live my life. And so I think that dictates it.
Yeah, it might surprise you a little bit, but I'm actually kind of more of the latter. In terms of I want the end result, and I don't mind doing some of the due diligence up front. But yeah, the idea. So for me, the active component of things, practicing medicine, and then my business at the Physician Philosopher, and helping people. And I want to mention something you said earlier, but anyway, that does push me more towards passive real estate.
Okay.
That said, I love what you said earlier, because fundamentally in this space, I think it is so important. There's some people out there that want to make money, and if they can, help people. And there are others like you and like me who want to really help people and to make money as a byproduct to grow the business so that you can help even more people, right? The goal is to help others. And as a process of that, as a byproduct of that, it'll very naturally help you get to your goals too. And I know that's subtle, but I think it's so important, because there is an immense meaning in having the value driven nature of a business being helping other people. So thank you for having that. I think it's really important. And I'm kind of curious. You named your podcast Limitless MD Podcast. So shameless plug for Vikram's podcast. Please go listen to it. It's very good. But I don't know the backstory. Why is it called Limitless MD? And what do you think people can learn from listening to that show?
So my podcast is called the Limitless MD Podcast: Freedom, Wealth, and Human Optimization. I was like trying to figure out, like, what are the three things? Like, I know there's a ton of people who do real estate podcasts, and there's a ton who do mindset work, and there's some who are more health and wellness. I'm like, me, I can't fit in that easy little nice little box.
I'm the same way.
So I was like, these are the three things I'm chasing. Really, I'm chasing freedom. I want wealth, and again, wealth is all it does is it magnify who you are. You're a stingy person, it'll make you even more stingy. You're a generous person, will make you more generous. And then again, I think human optimization is being left out of the conversation. My goal is to be 100-year-old Olympian. My goal is to, race with my great grandkids and beat them. And, I want to anti-age. I want to, one of my goals one year was to create a six-pack. Another goal was to, do a Tough Mudder and a Spartan. Another goal was to do Pikes Peak, and now I'm doing Mount Kilimanjaro. Another goal was to do Muay Thai kickboxing. And I do these things not because, of course I enjoy them, but it's what else can I push my body to do? Because if I can push my body to do that, most of it really is pushing my mind. And David Goggins, if you guys haven't read his book, you can't hurt me.
Can't hurt me.
Yeah, it is one of the most powerful books on the limits of what a mind can do. And this is the DNA that I want the physicians on this podcast listening to, imbibe into their body. Because if they can do this, doors open up. You want to be a CMO of the hospital? Let's make it happen. Do you want to scale your one clinic to 10 clinics and then sell to private equity? We can make it happen. Hey, you want to launch a supplement line? Great. Hey, do you want to create like a pro bono free clinic in the three different slums of the United States and get a nonprofit to be paying for all of it, so then you can really do your good work? Great. You want to launch a disaster relief fund that goes and medical missions everywhere in the world? Let's do that too. I don't care your goals, but make sure they're big, they're hairy, they're audacious, they're sexy, and you really want to go after them, because that's when life gets interesting. So
Yeah, the good old bag, the big, hairy, audacious goals. I'm all about it. And I love the examples you're putting down there of how to be limitless. And I think that maybe the theme of the show, right, is to have commas, not periods. I love how you say that. And because so many of us, our identity is trapped in very few specific things, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to have a limit. You can be limitless. So I'm all about it. Well, Vikram, if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you? How can they listen to you? And you just dropped a ton of zingers, one-liners, some powerful sets of wisdom there. So if people want to hear more of it, where can they find you?
sure. My website is vikramraya.com, VIKRAMRAYA.com. And that's my website. I do have a coaching program called the Limitless MD Coaching. And, I love to take doctors who are good and make them extraordinary. And I also have a real estate company, as we mentioned, called Viking Capital. It's called vikingmultifamily.com. They want to invest or learn more, educate themselves. We have a free 7-day passive income course that I like to offer everybody. So look, I'm on all the social media platforms. Get in touch. My goal is to up level you in whatever way I can.
Awesome, Vikram. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us.
Absolutely, Jimmy. Thanks so much.
Start before you're ready. Start by starting. Start now.